I am Ajit Kumar.
This meeting is being
I
recorded.
welcome all of you, all my viewers and panelists on the behalf of Sky. Today's subject of discussion is malls of future, designing concept and architecture. See, malls have evolved greatly over a period of time. Building a mall requires huge investment, time, hard work, and patience. The design and architecture of a shopping center is the backbone of the complete assembly and structure. An efficient shopping center plan is one where the customer does not get lost and is able to see every store in the mall without really making an effort to do it. Over the years, the designing concept of shopping centers in the country has greatly evolved. To discuss this, we have with us a panel of eminent personalities from the industry who shall be sharing their thoughts. We have Mr. Stuart Rowe. He is a group chairman, Broadway Maliana Holdings Limited. Then Sonal Srivastav, she is a director, design and development, Pioneer Property Zone Services. Brinda Shetty, she is a director, Bental Associates. Neha Mumaya, she is an associate director, Broadway Malia Holdings Limited. Rehan Haq, he is co-founder and COO, Proper Arkland. Rehan shall be moderating the session. So over to Rehan.
Thank you, Sky, and for this knowledge sharing platform. Thank you, Mr. Anjeev. Thank you, Mr. Sunil Pai. Dear fraternity members, retailers, developers, colleagues, and my dear friends, thank you for joining in this session. Retail in India has been a roller coaster ride for many years. And every now and then there's been something that derails it too. Probably because the mall and shopping center is essentially more sentiment driven. In the last 2 decades, we have lived through a semi-recession in 2007, slowdown in 2011, followed by a GST implementation related hit on the retail, demonetization, and then global recession followed by a pandemic. Quite a bit. The sector has had it rough, but at the same time has seen unprecedented growth as well in retail and in real estate. That's the magic of India, I think. However, each slowdown, the impact has made the retail professionals even more wiser and stronger. The crisis also has a merit. When there is a crisis, only the strong ones survive. The learnings has been immense for all of us. But in this segment, which has evolved, one important segment which has grown and which is being widely appreciated and recognized is the segment of design and architecture. So developers have realized that no matter how hard they try, if they do not have a retail conducive design, things will continue to fail. And the retailers also have played, they have paid close attention to how the mall is being made, who are the developers, who are the architects behind this entire show, and who are they hiring for the development of the project. And it has become a selling point as well for most of the developers. In fact, the architects name the design and the houses, the business houses who do design and who have done brilliant work, their credentials are all being now put in the brochures as well. It's becoming a selling point. So with that note, I would like to welcome this brilliant panel that we have today to opine on the modern trends and what the future beholds for all of us. So once again, please welcome Mr. Stuart Rowe, Group Chairman, Broadway Malyan, Neha Mumaya, Associate Director, Broadway Malyan, Sonal Srivastav, Director, Design and Development, Pioneer Property Zone, Brinda Shetty, Director from Bental Associates. My name is Rehan and I'm a retail enthusiast and I would like to moderate this session as instructed. First up, we would like our esteemed panel to give a concise view on what the trends have been in the last few years and what one trend they have been following very keenly. So let's start with Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, question for you. What kind of global trends have you witnessed in the last few years? with regard to design and architecture, and which one of them you've been most interested in and you've been following very keenly?
Okay, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for the invitation to join this today, and thank you for the questions as well, Sonal. Yeah, the trends have they've been developing quite quickly, and importantly, as well as competition grows in the marketplace. And you talked about pre-COVID and post-COVID as well. Well, but pre-COVID, we were already seeing some of the trends that were coming through into the marketplace, really driven around management and trying to encourage, obviously, footfall and things, and making the whole centre as successful as possible. Obviously, we've been through a terrible 2 years, effectively globally, and now we're seeing emerging markets again coming out of COVID, and an acceleration effectively of what was, which we'll see more and more of, is the need and the want for gastronomy, the food and beverage importance, and the percentage of area within centres growing on that front, and quite often obviously linked to outside areas as well, and the greening of centres as well, bringing the green inside and creating inside outside spaces. But also taking that further forward is what we were seeing pre-COVID was a big acceleration in terms of refurbishment of existing centres, and the need, really driven through competition again, to improve centres and make them more comfortable, make the interior design better, more attractive, but also bringing in a lot more entertainment, making the whole place experiential, basically. Now that goes hand in hand, obviously, with management as well, and how you curate centres effectively, how you make them interesting, the event planning, and all this sort of thing that go all hand in hand. And all of these things, as people are coming out of lockdowns and we're changing again as a world in some respects, and in different places, of course, there will be a big return to the shopping centres. It's a social environment. People want social activity. So we're seeing that more and more. And the other side of this thing is not just the acceleration of refurbishment of centres, but also you mentioned sort of new build happening as well, I think. And I think that if we're going new build, then these centres will become bigger, actually, more regionally based, and more what we call retail resorts. So we're linking in a lot more entertainment and experience, but also linking that into long stays as well. So you're literally building hotels within resorts, which we're doing in Spain, for instance, as an example. And then the other side of what I call mixing uses in mixed use. So we already know, of course, that mixed use schemes traditionally were quite complex, but actually they drive footfall, sort of, 7 days a week, effectively, what you're trying to do on that. So we're seeing senior living coming in. There's an example of that already done in Japan. We ourselves are putting student living into some shopping centres in Germany right now, and education coming in a centre we're doing in Brazil at the moment. And that goes hand in hand with hostels and also medical facilities. So it's trying to get the sort of 24/7 operation going. And I think that, that all of these things will change again, return to shopping centre, I think, without doubt, even if it's for sort of museum effect of what the shops do, because all these spaces are being created really through the reduction of store sizes, effectively. So that's a change as well. And they become more special, basically, and more places of interest to visit and socialise. So it is acting on the F&B side of things and the experience and entertainment side of things, and that, as I say, will be accelerated again, I think, as we come out of COVID.
Okay, Vrinda, with your experience of how things have been moving in the last few years, what have you witnessed as a trend?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for welcoming in this panel. First thing. See, with regard to what Indian context, I can definitely elaborate better. Here in India, whatever constraint or challenges what we faced is not just COVID. What we had is much even before COVID. There were challenges expressed because of expressive online shopping, what the customers have been going towards, and also because of the some of the government rules and regulations, the developers were facing challenges. So we could see that even before COVID also, the number of projects which were coming in, yeah, the developers' mindset to start a new projects, these were looking like a challenge. COVID only accelerated the whole process where market started little dimming. We could see during COVID, we could see a complete impact anyway. Before that also, we were seeing the lack of footfall which was happening. So by then only the market had started planning any new projects which were planned in last 2-3 years, which probably will come up in next 2-3 years. There is a larger plan where the shift is, we are looking towards focusing on entertainment and F&B. So almost every project which started in a year between 2019 or what is going to come up in next few years, we are going to see a very large component of F&B, especially when we see the projects which is happening in urban India. Okay, specifically when I say the Delhi, Bombay, or to larger extent Punjab, the north part of India, where you see the actually the foodie part of the whole country is. There we see a very strength on F&B. That may not be the very much a case when you come to towards the rural or the tier 2 or tier 3 cities, but still what we saw is there is a demand for the F&B component, and every center which is coming up has this integration of a larger F&B and entertainment along with the retail. So there is an understanding, like with the demographic change, what is happening, where your Gen Z is coming, where the preference is not just about curated products, preference is about the experience. So every project which has been designed in since last 2-3 years and which is going to come out as a product in next few years, you will see a focus on experience, not just on shopping. So whatever is going to come out as a product is definitely beyond shopping. So we see the integration. One more thing, what we see is like, the malls or the developments, what we were seeing in around 2010-11, they had a mixed use kind of a thing, either a mall sitting as part of a large residential development or a mall with just a hotel combination, which felt as like, a perfect combo to go with. But now what we see, the much more integration, where we see that as a part of the brief, the development which is coming is the offices, the variety of offices. It's not just IT. North sees more of a commercial office spaces where as part of a shopping complex, or even service apartment as part of a shopping complex. So these are the integration we see more of a urban India. But when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 city, there is definitely a very large growth in neighborhood center. Some of the cities, like especially want to highlight on Kerala, where probably every 200 kilometers, 150 to 200 kilometers, there is a target to come out with a neighborhood center or a maybe little above neighborhood center also, based on the quality or the population or the potential of the city. So this intent is there. So this we can see even in Punjab, even in Kerala, and some of the middle India places, states. So we see this diverse development of happening malls, not just in getting concentrated in the city.
Okay, anyways, coming back, Brinda, I think great observation. I think I really like the views that you've put. Neha, in your opinion, what are the key drivers for change, in terms of the Indian perspective? Your view on how experience and convenience is now driving the customers, social media effect on the spaces. What is your opinion on these?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the question, Rehan. I think it's very, very apt to ask this question moving forward from like emerging from the pandemic, especially because like Stuart highlighted earlier, I think retails are like almost like the social and the cultural glue of all the developments that we look forward to. And what is happening more and more is there is a mix of different kinds of expectations from retail. So mix of like co-working spaces or mix of like co-living, maybe some part education, some part workshops. So it's becoming more and more engaging than it was before. So no longer it's just like, oh, there is a certain brand that I want to go and shop into, and then I walk into the mall and choose the mall based off how close is it to me. But the question is more about where I want to hang out or spend the evening with my friends, family, whether does it have an indoor outdoor experience. Just to give you a quick example, the center that has opened in BKC recently, the Geo World Drive, which everyone is talking about, the fantastic
Yes.
place over there is the Wagtail, which is the outdoor area where you can even take your dog. So it becomes part of my overall experience, completely changes my preference to where I want to be. Some of the other examples which I can quote is, moving forward, whichever centers are going to be designed in the next couple of years, we see a lot more emphasis of what is different for this particular center as opposed to another one. Even if when we are looking at larger brand developers like mall developers, which have like maybe 10 or 15 assets within their portfolio, their key emphasis is how is this different or how is this going to be very specific to the space that we are designing it in, whether it's in Chennai or Bangalore or Delhi. What is it that this has to offer that any other center doesn't have to offer, right? So, what is the special experience that I'm creating here? And one of the key things that we are seeing is experientiality. Yes, everyone is talking about it, but how to bring that narrative into design is one of the challenges that we are facing on a daily basis. How to push the boundaries of typical anchor, vanilla, etc., etc., but make it more flexible. So especially learning from pandemic, there is resizing, there is a whole lot of discussion of how much percentage of what should be there. Definitely food is increasing a lot more. We are even seeing food coming down to like ground floor for that matter. Like right at the entrance I would like to have a wonderful coffee shop, and even
Correct.
if like that's where I start my journey of shopping, so be it. That's what the shoppers are also looking at, and that's what the mall developers are also looking at providing. Moving from that aspect, like programs and mix of programs, there is also a very strong trend towards making spaces instagrammable. Like almost like if I go to a certain space, I want to be seen within that space and link it back to my own story. So how to create that kind of spaces which will give you
Correct.
that instagrammable sort of effect. So I think what is very crucial to my generation, and I'm a millennial, so I'll tell you from my perspective is that we no longer are just living in the physical realm, right? We also have a digital realm, and they both often like collide with each other and mix very closely with each other. So as designers, also we have to be very careful of the physical space that we are designing and how that will translate digitally. So we are more connected than ever between physical and non-physical spaces. So hence comes like almost the time where shopping centers are the social glue where people would spend most of their time apart from their work. So these are the spaces
Correct.
that will provide you your facilities like gym, your small sort of clinics, or even education centers like workshops, or any kind of engagement centers for that matter. Co-working zones, if I want to meet or collaborate with someone, that's where I would go. Mix of lot of uses, like especially like Stuart said, also in China we see a lot of projects where education is becoming an integral part of shopping center, which is not a trend in India so much. But definitely when we look at pushing the boundaries, we do look at challenging some of the briefs that we get sometimes it's the other way around. Even small neighborhood centers, the client themselves want to challenge the normal set trend that, yeah, this is a percentage that anchor should be, this is a percentage, and they ask us like, what is it that should be over and above this? Simple example, like, can there be a rooftop without any services on it? you know can a rooftop become completely green, or can this become the space for playgrounds, for play spaces, not just for kids but even for adults? Like if I get off my office in the evening, can I go and play a football game over there in the evening? These are the very, very simple questions that then inform how we look at design programs, how we look at the briefs that are coming in and push the boundaries beyond.
Very, very interesting, Neha, and very well put also. Very well observed. I'm going to modify the question a little bit for Sonal. Sonal, why do you think the retail design is important to begin with? I think let's get to basics and let's hear your opinion.
Yeah.
terms of how does it affect the income and the operational cost parameters, and what effects do you think it's on the NOI of the stakeholders? Your view, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rehan. Glad to be here. I think it would be important to touch upon the business side of the design, which is more tangible, so to say, and which aims at establishing the financial viability for the stakeholders and the developers who are designing the who are building the mall. We have spoken about terrace gardens, and we are doing a lot of malls which are around the lake, and the whole design brief, as we have spoken with Stuart and it's changing. Uh, there's a green lung in most of the centers. A lot of the open spaces are getting integrated, um, and terraces. Lot of the brief is changing, but what remains vital is that there are certain elements of design which get you income, and there are certain elements of design which are a part of the operational cost, and that's something that we have to build in right up front in the design brief as well. There is a destination value that we certainly want, and it's ever changing. We have to do a very deep dive into the market. There's a lot of work done before the architects hit the drawing board, actually, as to what is relevant in a particular demographic, what's happening, what are the disposable incomes, what is it out of which that we can attract, because there is a particular pie of the disposable income and everyone is eating out of that. Our competition, the online, organized, unorganized, and we have to be mindful that whatever consumption we hit in the center is, there's a derivative of that, which is the rent which the developer gets. On the other hand, there is a lot of operational cost. A lot of elements like water bodies or the air conditioning, and then it's a part of the common area maintenance that we charge to the tenants, to our brand partners. So what at the designing stage and through the life of the center, we have to be mindful of that this is a certain percentage only that they can pay, and beyond that it becomes unviable for them. The business is unviable, and that's what the designers need to understand, that the whatever they are paying in terms of the electricity, the maintenance charges has to be maximum 12 to 15% of the cost. And that's what we have to build it upfront. All the systems that we adopt have to be value engineered to ensure that when the mall is operating and there is income, there are ancillary incomes. So the main income is the rent, and there is a large part, about 10 to 20% of the ancillary income that the developer can, have in the mall. Like, for example, we do a lot of events, a lot of promotions, barters, and that's the ancillary income. But the net operating income, which is the EBITDA, has to be month on month profitable for the developer. It can't, if the tenants are hurt, the business get hurts. And that's why we've seen, a lot of ghost malls in the past. And like going forward, the developers as well as the designers are more and more cautious. The idea is to create value. We are creating community spaces and creating value. The spaces have to be socially inclusive, socially responsible. But yeah, that remains the key.
So basically, the architects are going to make more money, is it?
We are only talking about how the developers should and the retailers are not hurting.
I was on a lighter note. I completely agree with you, Sonal, in terms of how things have been moving. I think if you have a 1 million square foot plus mall, India does not have that many brands. I think most of the brands for a million square foot plus kind of a development generally have similar brands which are operating similar areas that you're operating. So in the absence of new brands, in the absence of that depth, which is missing in the Indian retail,
Yeah.
I think in terms of design, in terms of architecture, in terms of experience, in terms of how how you work around the digital spaces, how you work around non-GLA income, all these things become very, very important to create a key differentiating factor.
I'll just make a point there that retail is the only asset class which gets you annual income in double digits for the developers. But only if it is planned well, it is thought through, the design is good, the mix is appropriate to the catchment to which it is relevant, and again, it is managed well and marketed well. So everything has to fall in place for the developer to make money. Anything that we don't do right, we sit with the compromise solution, and that affects the NOI in the end.
Completely agree with you, Sonal. But at the same time, even if you do all the things right, if the sentiments are wrong, you still don't end up making money. So retail is very tricky on that front.
Yes.
But yes, I agree with you in Koto in terms of how we have to plan the income through non-GLA and the other ancillary income as well. So, Mr. Stewart, I'm going to come back to you again on how you evaluate the future in terms of what holds for architecture and designs globally, internationally. Like, for example, in the definition of bigger and better is in Middle East. So whenever they want to make a bigger mall or a better mall or a mall of the future, the first thing they look at is making it larger than what they already have. So I think from the definition of what's going to be a future, the size of the mall is what plays a key role in the Middle East. While in the Southeast Asia, you will see they are a little more practical in terms of their designs, and it's a little more vertical sprawling and a little more compact and a little more effective with their utilization of space. So in your experience, have you noticed anything which is like a common ground for all the developers across the globe, across geographies, which is driving the sentiment post-COVID? What kind of common grounds do you see in terms of what the malls of the future is going to look like? What kind of design influence is going to come in play?
Okay, thank you. Sort of several aspects around that particular question and subject, really. First of all, I'll just go back on what we've just been talking about in terms of costs, actually, because I think one of the biggest effects and the biggest conundrum really at the moment is rising material costs around the world. That will have a big influence on what's happening and how things will happen now. And I'm already experiencing this in terms of budgets on jobs, which starts to limit, of course, in terms of the overall budgeting of a project, and getting down to the bottom line, if you like. Materiality and material costs are having a big effect now on what we're doing, and you almost get to a sort of what I'd call a shopping list of items that you need to tick off in order to make the best center you can against the overall budget and rising costs, of course. I think you touched on the Middle East. We're actually doing work at all scales in the Middle East. It's not just about big. Actually, we're doing neighborhood centers there. We're doing refurbishment of existing malls. I think, then you could talk about size of units. One of the biggest, we're seeing a reduction in size of units that tenants want. So that starts to have effect and brings in the mixed uses. We're seeing obviously failures of department stores as well. We've just taken out the department store on one centre and converted it all to food. And that was particularly in one mall in the Middle East, where to re-anchor basically a mall using food to draw footfall through to what was a difficult side of the mall itself. So going on, we're seeing all sorts of different sizes of shopping centres, as I say, but the effects really, after we're coming out of COVID now, I've talked about greening centres and the link inside and outside wherever possible, depending on the noise and air pollution qualities of where the place is. The strength of placemaking that comes in to support that. But then you come into more managerial problems and especially on older centres, the quality of air conditioning systems, and coming down to cleaning, because people are much more sensitive now to what they're touching, basically, what you're breathing, and that is we might possibly see a return to natural ventilation as well, and more outdoor mals as well, which we've done before. That trend went away. I think it'll come back, because I think people will feel much more comfortable in open air, in situations again where it's possible to do that. And then, because obviously in urban situations we'll be probably more enclosed. Then we need to talk about connectivity, integration, and support through local authorities and government, basically in driving integration and getting good mixed-use schemes in city centres. But also that needs driving in terms of sustainability as well, and sustainability in all levels, and how that works through to the building performance, through to supporting local businesses, bringing makers' yards in, some of these other things as well. And then the other biggest issue, I think, as well, and I think there will be this return to the shopping centre, and focus mainly on F&B and entertainment and experience, as we've been talking about. But for the first time ever, really, we're talking about 6 generations, what I call tribes, coming into shopping centres. But the 2 biggest cohorts are, of course, millennials and Generation Z. And that's obviously the biggest potential spending power just through number now. So, but because you've got 6 generations, 6 tribes in the place, that if you take F&B, for instance, as an example, you've got to cater basically for different ideas, different thoughts, different experiences. And that might be on noise level or interior design level, and splitting those uses around the centre, and not putting everything into traditional food courts, which we're seeing a reduction of now, actually, in terms of that, because they're much more tenant orientated with their own spaces. Even if you get food streets or anything like that, they tend to be a little bit more individual design now, possibly with an overall controlling method in terms of signage or whatever. So I'm seeing different types of attitude and demand, basically, in terms of different centres of what's going on in there. But certainly, I think materiality, air conditioning quality, the nature, comfort levels, interior design levels, there's going to be much more demand on those things to make a successful centre. And at the same time, go back to what I just said earlier, the material costs rising, and you've got to balance all of those ingredients in order to make the bottom line successful, and trying to understand that in order to make the best centre possible you can with what you've got, but catering definitely for the place and location of where we're talking about. So it's a real conundrum that's coming out of post-COVID situation, really, of where we are, what we're doing. But I think the overall theming, the overall trends is, we've all been saying this, it's F&B, entertainment, experience, comfort, interior design quality, and then you go into the sort of more managerial issues of, as I say, the air conditioning and nature, open air, these types of things. So yeah, curation, management, marketing, there's a whole set of ingredients that come together to make a place successful.
Great, that's a great view, Stuart. Nice macro view of how things are at this point of time. Let's see how. Let's hear what the Indian developers, what kind of ambition they are having. So let's go to Vrinda. Vrinda, let's start with you. What has been your experience in the last, especially post COVID and around COVID, the kind of design brief meetings that you must be having? What kind of ambition do you think you gauge the Indian developers have in terms of going all out in terms of material selection, to energy efficiencies, to the size of the construction, getting little more magnanimous with your circulation areas, the vertical transportation? What kind of a trend you see? Are they pulling back, or they are going all out?
Rehan, with regard to Indian developers and specifically, so India is as a country also is a big country. So we see a diversified taste there, a diversified lookout towards what is expected, what customer expects from the developer, and that translates to us as the designers, what developer expects from us.
Sorry, I'm going to just cut in and add another one. Do you see difference in terms of the brief that you're getting in the south of India and the north of India? Is there a difference?
There are a difference in the brief in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of probably the quantum of F&B. I wouldn't put it exactly that as a south of India or north of India.
But F&B is a global phenomenon. I think
it's a global.
Across
it's more
the country,
of
I think everybody is going.
It's more of urban India and tier 2, tier 3 cities. But in terms of expectation, one is, if I say about the brief, when I go to tier 2, tier 3 cities of India, there I see a larger demand for, probably post-COVID, there is a refinement to go with a very large anchors. Yeah, the retailers approach to developer, where, no more we see something happening in 20,000, probably 20,000 square feet of size of anchor. Probably there is a demand of one of such kind, and more of a mini anchor concepts are there, which we see this as a demand in non-urban India largely. Urban India, see very few urban India, when I say, are metros largely, okay. There I still see a similar, there is a larger flexibility which we have to keep in our design. Because one status change in market, which COVID was one instance, before that we had so many instances happening because of demonetization or whatever intermediate. So this status change, what we saw is in a project process of 5 years, one anchor size, like suddenly it demanded 30,000, it came down to 15, then it again went back to 20,000. So in a same project, we see this particular demand is coming, the varying demands which are coming up. So what we understood, especially when we design a very large center, okay, it is possible for us to accommodate this flexibility. And when we design our cores and when we design our the main circulation paths, we ensure such that the larger anchors can be divided or they can be clubbed to make the very large space. So such flexibility which we have started adopting on our design as a permanent measure in almost, at least since last 3-4 years, we have been doing it extensively. And that is one thing what we've seen, and post to COVID, that has been very much intense. Another thing what we saw is, like, there is a demand for largely where the hybrid centers, there is demand for more of a outdoor integration with the retail design, I would say. So whether it is in form of a hybrid center where the climate allows it, or the mix allows, your developer's intention fulfills that. Otherwise, at least in every project of ours, whether it is a small 3 lakh center or a 1,000,000 square foot center, what our effort has been is to introduce a plazas, the large piazzas, whether part of closer to the centralized space or as at the entry level. What it is helping us is, see, no more, your customer has to visit and revisit. It's not just a visit. So you need to create a purpose for revisit. And already our customers are overexposed with the online shopping and the digital shopping. They are well equipped with their product. They know what they want to purchase. Every shopper who is coming here, he might have browsed through the several Instagram pages. Already the retailers are floating. Only thing he wants to find out is this product is available in this particular brand, and that brand lies in this particular mall. So till that extent, he routes it. Once he maps his destination, he would come there. So his shopping process is very quick. It is not too prolonged process, like the way what probably we have been seeing in last 5 years. And now there is definitely this change is there, and it is going to go further, like, more change, where you are spending minimum time in selection because you are much more clear in what you want to achieve as a shopper. Then what is that holding him in the shopping center? We said one is F&Bs anyway there. Apart from F&B, these kind of outdoor spaces where their purpose is not just to shop, where their purpose is also to meet their friend or as a family gathering, or some of the social responsive events which generally are promoted in such places, whether whether you have a flea market or you have an event where you clean the city, or even something where the music is integrated, which would definitely makes it a point of attraction and destination of the day. It will make that place a destination of the day. And wherever we have applied this recent, I mean, if I see the mall which is opened in 2009 in Dwarka, Delhi, the Vegas, we have given, it is a mixed use development, and the positioning, the size of the mall, and with other mixed uses happening there with the commercial offices, it allowed actually us to have a very good, nice plaza at the center. And today, the way the plaza is occupied, the way it is used, I understand during the COVID time there was a gap, but after that it has been used tremendously for all purpose. So future is going to be like, as already mentioned by Stuart, we are Gen Z is which is going to come next, and who believe in not just Instagrammability of the space, they believe in the storyline behind it. For them, everything, there is a lot more emotional content what they believe in. So they would believe in their involvement in every activity. Probably such plazas or such open spaces which allow them where the emotional engagement is there, not just as an engagement as a shopper. So to add to that, we are coming up with like, the 2-3 formats, more than 2-3 formats in various states, which are integrated with waterfronts. We are coming out one in Kochi, one in Raipur, and there are a few more upcoming in others in Ludhiana kind of a state, where there are waterfront, whether the waterfront is there because virtue of the sea residing next, or by virtue of the mandatory waterfront which the laws are demanding. But there the developments are where the high street or the retail development is happening around that, and our focus is there how to integrate them as a whole, development as a whole, how to allow the water to speak with the retail, how as a leisure, as an experience that can enhance the whole space and whole walk of the shopper. And I'm sure these developments, which would take, as per me, at least 3 to 4 years down the line, these would come as full-fledged. We have seen such many of such in Middle East, which is happening. See, this is also one more important thing, quite exposure of our customers, shoppers, as well as the developers, everything to an international way of shopping and creating experiences also has influenced where it has encouraged them to go with such developments, which we weren't seeing. Otherwise, even to give a fountain in a mall, there is to be a restraint. How would I maintain it? Even to give little green patch, there is a restraint. In recent, we received a brief from one developer in Hyderabad where they wanted to completely engage with the sustainability to such an extent that they want to bring in a lot of green inside the center. Okay, so these are the good challenges which are thrown to us as architects, and that's how we are adapting that in our design. And our best effort there is, Sonal mentioned about like, how to keep the cost low. I mean, that's a very important thing what she mentioned, because making these provisions are fine, but again, what as designers along with the MEP and the mall management team, what at the end of the day what we have to work here is, especially in India, how to maintain it, how to maintain these extra facilities what we are making it, how to make it cost effective or efficiency, what are the ways to monetize these spaces. So there are various ways already. The various developers are working, the tenant mixed team is working, we as architects also, we are suggesting there are farmers markets can come in, the flea markets can come in, the events can be established. So there are many options which is already available in market. Probably we'll see more executable format in next few years. That's what we look at.
So, all these ancillary things like a flea market or a farmer's market coming in, the area allocation is fairly large. I mean, it's not like a small area. It's not like a kiosk area. It's a large area which you have to allocate. But these areas typically are sanctioned under BTL and if most of the malls do not have that kind of a luxury of having these BTL spaces, so in those cases, how do you improvise in those spaces,
So
because you can't consume FAR area otherwise.
so it is see certain cities have limitation definitely, but most of the cities also have a green reservation. See, developer is also taking those extra miles where he can achieve it. Not, it's not just monetization is a benefit, is a second, because he's maintaining, he would look at taking a benefit out of it, but it also to develop the whole center as a whole experience and a well established product. That is the intent here. Like in Bangalore, we have these park and open spaces available with every development. That always they have a strategy to take it as a lease back and develop that as a well-versed place which can integrate with retail outlook very well. So similar, and every almost even Delhi has it, even Maharashtra and Bangalore, they have a ground coverage restriction. FSI is not just about consuming just the larger plate. Definitely, if the ground coverage 50%, we will try to consume the complete 50%, because that is where the best rental benefit developer would get. But how else we'll treat the other 50%? So I can just make a road out of it. Yeah, I can create some space out of it, which is adding experience to the center. So the whole approach is towards adding that value. And what we see is we are doing projects in Kerala, we are doing in the Punjab side, even in Pune, Bangalore, Delhi. Almost most of the places we could achieve it. That's what I believe. If we are doing it, we have achieved it. That means it's possible for us to do. There may be those 20% of projects where it is not possible to achieve, but then still you need to have a customer engagement spaces. So what? So we try to bring in such spaces as form of terraces, where now almost every terrace, like, either it is engaged with F&B, but F&B may not be certain height, it may not be permissible as a FAR area. Then there is a lot more outdoor sports which is engaged. Like we see even in Bombay, every rooftop terrace has a your six-sided football turf or your action cricket turfs. So, and they're well occupied. We actually see that it's not limited to the urban cities. This is seen in the places like Calicut. This is a feedback what we get from our client. It's not just about making a provision, what they are getting out of it. So almost whatever the development happening towards Kerala, every terrace is occupied. We are occupying either with the trying to make sports arena there in the terrace, the very large terraces, or also the Geo was a compulsion drive-in theater. I mean, it is a mandatory which they had to give, so it is developed. But this is also now being tried in many of the malls. Not necessary you have to drive in. I mean, if the possibility is there, you drive in. But otherwise, what they're trying is they're trying to give that experience. In fact, some of the movie formats, your operators already have that format which they can plug in as giving that experience, like as if you're it's an open air theater experience basically. So during COVID, it also, like, they were in talks, probably when such pandemic comes in, having such experience in outdoor, probably people also may feel safe and convenient for them. Still there is no complete proof of it, but that thought process was on in the developer industry when we were discussing design with them. So there are various alternative where we find to give such spaces, whether food court, terraces, or the larger plaza spaces. Yeah.
Agreed. Neha, coming to you. Quickly, we're running out of time, so we have a couple of more things to talk about. So what's your view in terms of how the ambition is moving for the Indian developers? How do you rate the ambition and the vision of the Indian developers at this point of time?
I think the graph is moving northward, like upwards, for sure.
Have you ever heard, has any developer come to you saying that I want to match international standards, or it's going to be world class, I want to do something which is bigger and better?
I mean, with all the A-class ones, this is a given. I think that they want international standards for sure. What is
No,
interesting is,
matching is
like,
one,
one of the
exceeding is another.
centers, some want to exceed for sure. I wouldn't name particularly, but What is interesting is like last couple of years during the pandemic times, which is more challenging times and more times when we are pushed to think of what is going to be the future. One of the briefs that we got is that I want no square foot of the terrace or the rooftop being used in any of the services. So that
That's a
itself
common
was
concern.
like massive challenge, and it's not a simple thing. Like simply put, like it's a 1 million plus square feet of development that we are talking about, and that being without any kind of services above, and especially for the mix of uses that we were looking at. We had a hotel, we have a co-working format of offices, a microbrewery, a shopping mall, all in one single building structure. It is quite challenging how you route your services, how you route your vertical circulations, what connects with what overlooks on what, etc., etc. So those are the things that really help challenge and push the boundaries. Um, One of the ones that have come to us is like rather than making a boxed in kind of a shopping mall where everything is air conditioned within a big large box, how can we integrate, break down the fabric and make it into almost like a retail village. This was one of the recent competitions that Broadway Malian India office was working on, and we won that competition. And here the goal was, yes, there could be a small format mall which has the multiplex and F&B and some of the uh, typical stores that you always find in the mall. But how do you break down the larger fabric and make a larger retail? And of course, this is part of a larger master plan development, right? So they want a very interesting sort of G+2 format of retail village that everything in the development looks onto. So it almost becomes like this iconic sort of uh, low rise zone, very human scale, very almost like shop in the park kind of a thing. If you may say, like giving an international example, which is already built, is something like Miami Design District, right? It's like art, public spaces, event spaces penetrating within the retail fabric. And then you, of course, have your Gucci, Prada, etc., like boxes sitting within the park. But the experience is very, very different. And if you just Google the centers which make most money in the world, these are the ones that come up. And there's a reason why that there is that, right? Because there's a completely different experience that they are providing. And they can very well withstand pandemics, etc., because the manageability is very different kind and scale. So more so, I think people are looking for diverse sort of formats within the retail as well, not just looking at a typical shopping center format. A lot of our residential projects also now ask for retail. Of course, there is a mandate of like whatever 0.5% or 1% or 2% or whatever by the government authorities that you have to provide convenience retail, but they want to push that boundaries and go one step forward. Can it be more F&B oriented? And if it is within a residential premises, how can the residential connect back to retail? Because early on, everyone did that you had towers and then you had some retail sitting down, and the connection was always externalized. But now we are looking at challenges of how can we internalize that connection, that without leaving my premises, when there is a situation of lockdown or whatever, how can I still access some of the retail that is within my premises? So that is, retail is always this very strong glue between various developments, even within offices. Just taking the case of BKC, the number of F&B that have opened up in the last couple of years during the pandemic and after is insane. But that is what is creating that vibe that you want to be in BKC, which earlier probably was like a more serious and dead space. But now I step out of the building where I am. You've got amazing F&B around, and more of them having like an open plaza, like sit in the outdoors, which Bombay never had before. So now trends are changing that way. And so this is, a lot of it is also coming from the briefs that we get from the clients. And when we get such interesting briefs, it also helps us challenge our own ideas and push for newer ideas that we see as trends from our international experience. One of the other things that we are also seeing is that people want an integrated design. And what I mean by that is that right from the technical aspects of planning or like strategizing how a shopping mall should be, all the way to landscape and all the way to signages and wayfinding and branding of a center, it has to have a strong central narrative. Everything needs to connect with each other, everything needs to talk to each other and form this sort of explicit consumer journey that you're talking about, right? How a person enters, where they shop, where they eat, where they chill, how they go for a movie, where they come back. So this is all becoming like more and more integrated. So it's no longer like an architect just designs something and then someone else comes in and plugs in. Of course, those models are there and they still exist, but more and more the demand that we see from our clients is how can we, and we can do that because we are an integrated practice. We have all disciplines across, right, from as soft as branding to as hard as master planning and strategizing and policy making, to architecture, which kind of glues all of that together and brings everything together, and landscape. There's an immense role of landscape moving forward in every single project, not just retail, but every single project that we are doing these days.
Like, apart from landscape, I think digital will play a very, very important role. Sonal, one final question to you before we wind up with our inferences for the discussion.
Yeah.
What do you think, what kind of questions or what kind of queries are you getting from your existing clients, and what are you advising them in terms of the digitalization of spaces? This is one question from one of my friends, Mr. Prasad Rani. In terms of how are we transforming our physical spaces into digital spaces? So I think what he's trying to ask is that, all these various categories of players, they all have their own digital journey which they're trying to undertake, and each one of them has their own artificial intelligence and other hardware, software which they're also putting into their omni-channels coming into play, the endless aisles coming into play. There's a lot of other things which is coming into play, which is also transforming physical spaces into digital spaces. So what is your view and what is your advice to your existing clients?
Yeah, well, Prasad has done a lot of, the customer connect that we had digitally with our customers across all centers. We used to do almost like 4 to 5 events in a day for all the customers with bloggers. They also needed space. Technology is playing like a very big part. Like in today's time when everything is at your fingertips, so goes for the mall. The customer, wherever she is, whether she's physically at the mall or not, she's always connected with the center, what's happening, what events are happening, what are the offers. And the marketing team ensures that she's always updated. If she's wanting to come to the center again, she, from the time she thinks of going to the shopping center, if she wants to book a cab, or if she wants to know what all to do, probably she can check on the merchandise too on the phone before going to the center. If she has to plan a party or she needs catering, whatever, like she can do everything digitally. She is connected with us whether she's in the center or not. And if she's a premium customer, she has an access to the lounge and the special amenities that a particular mall would offer. And like there are a lot of categories which are changing, and the omni channel is making the lines are blurring. Like if you walk into a store today, if you want a particular garment and your size is not available, or the particular color is not available, they will browse it for you and deliver it to you wherever you want. That's what
completely agree.
Scenario
Completely
is
agree with you.
changing. Like you can actually, Neha is a millennial and I have a millennial daughter. I go into the mall and I just order for her wherever she is. That's how the landscape is changing. So,
Agree. I completely agree. And I think next time, I think Prasad Rani himself is more capable of answering this question. I'm going to get him on the panel next time. Prasad, this is for you. One final question for Mr. Stewart before we wind up this session. Mr. Stewart, how far do you think India is? Will India ever be able to say that we have the most progressive, futuristic mall in the world, or we're always going to be falling behind? What do you think? How far are we from the global standards right now, and what do you think, and how much time will you to cover it?
Right, that's a tough question, actually. I'm glad it's online as well, not physical. So I'll be under attack, I think. I think I think there's quite a long way to go in India, if I may say so, because I think a lot of the malls are pretty standard. We already know that there's a lot of out-of-date malls in India. We've worked on several refurbishments. I've worked in many malls with Neha actually in India in terms of trying to understand where they need to go. I think there's a little bit of resistance in terms of change as well sometimes. I think there's, in terms of getting to this, you talked about global design earlier and global standards. I think that there's, the planning of the malls is there, but more in a traditional way. I think we're moving on a little bit now in terms of much more experiential sort of design and not actually necessarily seeing all the shop fronts, maybe. And going through, a bit more adventurous routes and things like this through centres. But definitely interior design is going to be more and more important, integrated with landscape as well. We've all been talking about that. So there's, I think, the balance of everything against costs, against build, against how it functions, what the tenants are, all these things is a big, it's a big jigsaw puzzle, basically. But in terms of, I'm sure there's room in India for from some very special centres, and I mean very different in terms of how they're laid out, basically. And I think that might be a big attraction in terms of bringing people in, because to use a hospitality term, it's about guest experience as well. And you've got to also, through that, you've got to create reasons for people to want to go to your centre or your place, and if it's open air, for instance. Putting people first is going to be very important, and to give the different experience is going to be pretty valuable, I think, going forward as well. So I think there's plenty of room for a very different approach, if I may say so.
Thank you very much. I think that's all. We're running out of time now. So thank you, panelists, for your views, and thank you, viewers, for your time. That's all from us in this session. Over to Mr. Ajif.
So, Rehan, I hope you had covered the. Vijayan Kutti has a question. Have you seen that? See, his question is, we get different views from people about zoning of the mall. Some in favor of it, and others say the mix will invite more footfall to the floors and impulse buying takes place. What is your views on it? This is Vijayan Kutti. This is his question.
I'll take that one. The zoning is something which is evolving over a period of time. So zoning no longer pertains to keeping all your socks on one basket and all your shoes in one basket. So zoning has also been evolving over time, and it will keep evolving as we go forward. It's more pertinent to have more interesting zonings, zones within the mall, which pertain to a certain segment of wallets. You create those little sub-zones within the mall. I think it'll be more pertinent from the size of the mall as well. So if you're looking at a very large mall, it's from the convenience point of view that you try and restrict a certain audience within a certain area so that there is convenience of shopping. While you're looking at a smaller mall, like a neighborhood mall or a smaller mall, the importance of zoning really goes down, because you're navigating within the project very quickly, and therefore it's more about how you touch upon important categories. It's not about where you place your categories. So from that point of view, I think from the size, which is a big driver in terms of how you're zoning it, and even in larger malls, I think zoning is also evolving. So that's my view. Any other view from the panelists, most welcome. Please throw in.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just make a point there that zoning to begin with is ever evolving. So it changes with time. In every center, 15% of the tenants they churn out, and each square foot of the mall has to perform for the stakeholders. So the zoning, like we always keep a hawk eye on what works and which shop is not working. And it does, kind of has a very big impact on the people coming to the mall, their dwell time and the money that they spend. So zoning is something that you look at continuously. Yeah.
I think zoning is particularly important. I was talking about earlier about the tribes, what I call tribes, the generations that are coming in. So you need to cater spatially and offer-wise for those different age groups as well.
Neha and Brinda made a very important point where this, and it's a reality that, there are retail precincts within the corporate parks and the residential, and they are very different from the conventional malls. There are retail precincts on the highways, on bus stations, metro stations, and the zoning is very different, even on airports. So, the zoning caters to people in transit, or if it is within a corporate park, however small the mall is or the retail precinct is, it caters to that particular catchment, and it has to be well thought of for it to work, even if it's a small retail pocket.
Mr. Vijayan Kunti, I hope it answers your question. If you have anything, you please get in touch with us offline.
So with this, we to conclude our today's session. It was really very informative and very enlightening. I hope all my viewers must have enjoyed it. I thank you all my panelists for sparing their precious time for us. So with this, we conclude our today's session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.